And on the line with us is Anand Giridharadas. I'm sorry if I'm mangling it, Anand. Could you welcome? First of all, welcome to the program, and please tell me how to pronounce your last name.
Yeah, it's Anand Giridharadas.
Okay, thank you very much. And I am so looking forward to your
good progressive America we're building is like we learned to say Dostoevsky and Tchaikovsky, so we gotta start expanding the palette.
I agree, and after I've said it a few times, I will have it.
It'll roll off the tongue after a little bit, but I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anand, and I'm looking forward to your book. It was supposed to arrive here before now. I guess it's going to be delivered today, but I saw a couple of interviews that you did a week or so ago, and you know, this is you know, I'm very much looking forward to that. Winners take all, the elite charade of changing the world. And I want to talk to you about that, but first, Silicon Valley Saudi Arabia problem. You published this piece over the last week, I believe it was, and you talk about, you know, Uber and the dog walking app Wag and DoorDash and Slack, and the thing that all of these things have in common is Saudi Arabia. Tell us about this.
You know, many of your listeners listening in on this program will have taken an Uber. Many will have ordered lunch every now and then from the app DoorDash. Many will have, as you say, have had their dog walked by Wag. Many will have, you know, gone to a co-working space called WeWork, or had boring office conversations about things of zero consequence on the website Slack. And what a lot of your listeners may not know is that all of those apps and technologies are brought to you by Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has long cultivated Washington and long cultivated U.S. industry in terms of arms purchases. Prince Alawid a long time ago had a big stake in Citigroup, but
and in Fox News.
You're right, but a relatively new front has been opened in which the Saudis, under this new Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, have made a strong push into Silicon Valley, acting through a kind of open secret of a front, which is a big Japanese fund called SoftBank, which had a thing called a Vision Fund, $100 billion fund that has been throwing cash around Silicon Valley and the tech industry globally. And $45 billion of that Vision Fund was actually Saudi money, as we said in this piece in the Times that actually runs today on the op-ed page. And now there's a second Vision Fund coming out, another $100 billion, $45 billion of that, again, from Saudi Arabia. And so you have this fascinating situation where a regime that has been aptly described as an ISIS that made it, in other words, a kind of ISIS worldview that turned itself into a nation state and whose legitimacy comes not from any kind of moral leadership, but from the fact that it managed to commandeer a country. Basically now infiltrating the apps that many millions of Americans use as part of their daily conveniences. And I think we all need to think about, you know, the Jamal Khashoggi case certainly is not the first time we should have thought about the abuses of Saudi Arabia, but sometimes stories grip the world, like that Syrian boy on a beach in Europe some years ago. And this story is an opportunity for us to think afresh about what has frankly long been a toxic and abusive relationship with Saudi Arabia that we need to get the hell out of.
Yeah, I'm guessing you saw this op-ed in the Washington Post over the weekend. Will you work for a murderer? Specifically about this issue, and it's really quite remarkable how a single person's story can turn the world. Whereas you hear 10,000 civilians bombed in Yemen, and it's like, oh well, it's 10,000 people. But you see one person's picture, and all of a sudden it gets real. Tell us about Winners Take All.
Yeah, Winners Take All.
Your book.
The piece that I was describing grows out of it because Winners Take All is a book that I have been working on for the last 3 years, just out, and it is about how the very rich and powerful in the United States have been playing an extraordinary double game. A double game sort of captured in the Saudi Arabia cash story, but on a much grander scale. And the double game is the following, Tom. On one hand, and many of your listeners will recognize this, we live in an age in which rich people seem to be bending over backwards to do good, to give back, to make the world a better place. Which Silicon Valley baron is not in the middle of 3 or 4 major efforts to make the world a better place. Their company is building community. They're colonizing Mars to create a refuge in case we ruin the Earth. They're ending all the diseases through philanthropy. They're helping homelessness. They're in charge of fixing the schools of Newark, onward and onward. You have all these young people on elite campuses. You step onto any elite campus today and you ask young people, what do you want to do with your life? Virtually every college senior has some plan to, start a social enterprise that will turn recycled poop into coffee and somehow then, barter it for tote bags in Rwanda or something like that. You have this extraordinary compassion of America's elite today. And at the same time, the numbers are staggering because this is the most unequal time in America in about 100 years. This is the kind of inequality that led to the Great Depression. This is also the kind of this is a period in which the winners have cornered almost all of the benefits of progress over the last 30, 40 years. This is a period in which 82% of new wealth created last year went to the global top 1%. And so you have this way in which the winners of our age claim to be saving us and helping us and changing the world, but they are engaged in building and maintaining and upholding a winners-take-all economy that siphons almost all the gains from progress to the top and shuts most Americans out of the American dream. And I decided to go on a journey to report on this, but I did one thing a little differently, Tom, which is when most people write about inequality, when most reporters get into that subject, they report from the bottom. They report from the people to whom inequality is happening. And I decided to try something different with this book, which is to actually write about inequality from the vantage point of the top. Because to write about inequality from the bottom is to write about a house by profiling the people living in it and ignoring the architect. It is not the poor who design our unequal economy. It is the rich who design it and fight for it and keep it. And so I decided to spend time reporting on it. And I went into those worlds. I reported from what I talk about as kind of the inner sanctums of our new Gilded Age and tried to understand how the people on top engage in this kind of cognitive dissonance of trying to make the world better while preserving a system that causes the very problems they seek to solve.
Anand Giridharadas, I still don't have it, sir.
Anand Giridharadas, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I will. Anand Giridharadas. The book is Winners Take All, the elite charade of changing the world. Would it be accurate to kind of summarize this, to boil this down to simple English, and not that yours isn't, but you went through a whole series of things to say, basically back in the 80s when the Reagan administration, the Republicans rewrote the rules of American capitalism in some really significant ways, stopping in the enforcement of the Sherman Antitrust Act, busting up unions, doing away with workers' rights, starting the rightward shift of the Supreme Court, all these things. That basically they and the billionaires who funded them initiated a multi-trillion-dollar, I think it's $14-15 trillion transfer of wealth from the middle class and working people in the United States to the top 1%, and in the process used that as a rationalization. This is, the old two Santa Claus theory, from the 70s of, run up massive debt when Republicans are in office and then scream about it when Democrats come into office, so they'll cut Social Security and things. And then they used this transfer of wealth and this change in tax code to justify the gutting of the social safety net. And now the billionaires who benefited from all this are stepping in and saying, we'll be the new social safety net. It's A, if that's exactly what you're describing, that sounds like B, it sounds like virtually the definition of the kind of libertarianism and objectivism that Ayn Rand talked about and that in 1980 David Koch ran for vice president on the platform of. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that was, Tom, it was as if you've stolen my book tour stump speech. That is exactly right. And the reality is, many of your listeners will know this expression, it's like a fox guarding a hen house. The way I often describe the story you just told very well is we are the hens in this analogy, the American people. And the hens used to have a guard. And the guard was the government. It wasn't perfect, but it was, it worked. It protected us. It can always be better. And in the 1970s and then 1980s, as you say, a fox came around and decided that the Guard was a threat. And that Fox was business interests that decided, through the Powell memo starting in the 70s and onward, that they needed to take the reins of government, that they needed to fight for their interests and have kind of the Chamber of Commerce libertarian view of the world more dominant in political life. And they succeeded. They got Reaganism, they got Thatcherism, they got Bill Clinton in 1996 to declare that the era of big government was over. And as their revolution succeeded, the Fox bit the Guard in the leg. Government had less money, less capability, fewer people to do things, became less capable of solving those social problems. Meanwhile, business flourished because it was not being, policed. And then the hens are unguarded because the fox has bit the hen and the fox has bit the Guard in the leg. And the fox comes around to the hens and says, "What a shame you're unguarded. What a shame. This is so tragic. Allow me to step in and, be your guard." And it's an extraordinary game that has been played. The very people, I get this all the time from business guys, and it's always guys who say, well, I agree with you in theory, but don't you think the government is underfunded and weak? And I say, yeah, because of business people, because of people who pushed for a government that regulates less and taxes less. I'll tell you one story on that I find so powerful.
We just have 15 seconds, sir.
David Rubenstein from the Carlyle Group, famously a patriotic philanthropist, as he calls himself, gave money when the Washington Monument broke to repair half the money because the government couldn't afford it. So the government can't afford things, I got to step in. David Rubenstein had fought tooth and nail for the carried interest loophole that made the government have less money. These people are fighting on both sides of a war.
Right. Yeah. And this, and we've been hearing this pitch forever that charity should be the province of the rich and the churches, right? It's just nuts. Anand, thanks so much for being with us today, and I'm so looking forward to your book, Winners Take All. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Great talking with you, and I look forward to talking with you again.